The Young and the Restless spoilers. Michael Baldwin's decision to tender his resignation as Victor Newman's personal attorney rippled through the marble halls of Newman Enterprises like a seismic shockwave, shaking the fundamentals of loyalty and duty that have long defined the tumultuous relationship between employer and protégé. For months, Lauren Fenmore had watched in mounting anxiety as Michael shouldered increasingly perilous assignments, navigating the dark underbelly of Genoa City's legal battles with a steadfastness that bordered on self-destructive. In clandestine moments, between whispered conversations over late-night dinners and hushed phone calls cradled against Lauren's trembling ear, he had attempted to reassure her that he understood the moral quagmire in which Victor often cast him. Nevertheless, each new directive from the Newman patriarch only stoked Lauren's fears for Michael's physical safety when he was dispatched to confront union bosses whose violence was legendary, fears for his mental health when he was asked to defend corporate misdeeds that ran against the grain of his own conscience. When Michael finally broached the subject of resignation, his voice at once resolute and tinged with sorrow, Lauren recognized in his tone the culmination of sleepless nights, frayed nerves, and an unshakable sense of duty that had been baked into his very character. She listened as he spoke of the night terrors that plagued him, the echoes of gunshots and the glare of rifle muzzles from that fateful incident at Newman Ranch when Ian Ward had turned renegade and put Victor's life on the line. Fans of The Young and the Restless will recall how Michael, acting on instinct and pure loyalty, had intervened at the 11th hour, disarming Ward and shepherding the Newman family to safety. Victor, shaken to his core, had embraced Michael with gratitude and the kind of reverence usually reserved for blood relatives, cementing a bond that many believed transcended the usual parameters of employer and employee. Yet even that heroism was not enough to erase the darker aspects of Victorian loyalty, and Lauren had witnessed firsthand the talismanic power Victor Newman wielded over Michael's better judgment. The boardroom spectacle on Friday afternoon was nothing short of dramatic theater. Victor strode into the glass-walled sanctuary with the imperious confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. His tailored suit was impeccable, his gloved hand resting on the mahogany table as if it were an extension of his will. Michael followed, shoulders squared, eyes betraying none of the inner turmoil that had fractured his once unshakable composure. As he laid the resignation letter before Victor, its crisp folds reflecting the fluorescent lighting overhead, Lauren's heartbeat seemed to cease. She imagined herself standing in Michael's place, the weight of bold defiance bearing down on him even as the words effective immediately fell from his lips. What she witnessed next was a flash of something dark and bewildered in Victor's eyes, a rare glimpse of the man's inner world unguarded and raw. "You're quitting?" Victor repeated, his voice a low rumble that seemed to make the very air in the room tremble. "After everything I've done for this company? For you?" The rhetorical question hung heavy in the air, laden with accusation as much as disbelief. Victor Newman, who had engineered hostile takeovers, outmaneuvered corporate adversaries, and brokered alliances with the most dangerous players in the field, now felt betrayed by the one person whose unwavering allegiance he had always counted on. Michael, whose ethical compass had been slowly but inexorably warped by his boss's murky directives, chose once more to stand firm. He spoke not as a supplicant begging for forgiveness, but as a husband and a man who refused to be complicit in the erosion of his own moral code. "I did what I thought was right," he said quietly. Lauren, standing just beyond the tinted glass, saw Victor's jaw clench, a rare crack in the facade of unassailable power. The hush that followed was almost ecclesiastical, as though Newman Enterprises itself held its breath. Outside those boardroom walls, Genoa City buzzed with speculation. Headlines on digital billboards flickered: "Michael Baldwin quits Newman Enterprises, loyalty crisis at Newman Ranch, Lauren Fenmore's worst nightmare." In the Grand Phoenix lobby, patrons paused mid-sip of their cappuccinos to debate the ramifications of Michael's departure. Would Newman Enterprises falter without its fiercest legal champion? Could Victor weather this storm of betrayal without retaliating in a manner that threatened Michael's reputation, his law license, and perhaps even his freedom? Meanwhile, Lauren grappled with a cascade of emotions: relief that Michael would no longer be forced to compromise his ethics, terror at the prospect of Victor's wrath, and guilt for the role she had played in urging him to prioritize their life together over corporate loyalty. In the aftermath of Michael's resignation, Newman Enterprises entered a period of uneasy suspense. Staff whispered in hallways, legal aid assistants consulted each other in hushed tones, and members of rival corporations, Abbott, Chancellor, Hamilton, sensed an opportunity to exploit the fissure in Victor's armor. Yet those who knew Victor best also understood that setbacks of this nature often triggered his most ruthless responses. Lauren feared reprisals? Legal sabotage, character assassinations, or even more clandestine tactics designed to isolate Michael and force him back into Victor's orbit. But in private moments, she also glimpsed a spark of pride in Michael's eyes, a glimmer of the man she had fallen in love with long before the Newman shadow had loomed over his every decision. As the sun set over Genoa City, painting the skyline in a wash of gold and crimson, Michael and Lauren retreated to the sanctuary of their home. A sanctuary that, for the first time in months, felt genuinely safe. There, amid the laughter of friends and the promise of nights unbroken by anxiety, they dared to envision a future shaped by their own values rather than dictated by Victor Newman's ruthless ambitions. They spoke of Michael's plans to join a boutique legal firm devoted to pro bono work, offering his talents to clients who could not otherwise afford expert representation. They envisioned weekends away, far from the glare of corporate limelight, and the chance to rebuild Michael's spirit in the quiet rhythm of small-town life. Yet even as they dared to dream, they knew the ripple effects of Michael's decision would persist: ghosts in boardroom corners, hushed conversations in shadowed corridors, and the lingering question of whether Victor Newman would ever truly let go of the man he had once considered the son he never had. In that fragile space between hope and uncertainty, Michael Baldwin discovered a liberation he had not known he craved, and Lauren Fenmore found solace in the knowledge that, at last, her husband's safety and integrity would no longer be held hostage by the demands of a corporate titan. Seated at the sun-dappled patio of Society Cafe, Lauren Fenmore smoothed the folds of her simple silk blouse and took a steadying breath before meeting Nikki Newman's gaze. Across the small round table, Nikki, Victor's indomitable wife, raised an eyebrow as she tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, porcelain skin flushed with curiosity and barely concealed irritation. Lauren reached across the table, lowering her voice to a confidential murmur, and laid out the letter Michael had tendered that very morning. The words had been typed with clinical precision, effective immediately, yet to Lauren they shimmered with the weight of a lifetime spent in Victor's orbit. Nikki's expression flickered between disbelief and disapproval as she traced a slender finger along the crisp stationery, finally setting it down with a gentle tap. Michael resigning, Nikki said, exhaling through pursed lips, is one thing. Walking away from Victor Newman is another. Her voice carried the steely undertone of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms and family gatherings alike. Lauren could almost see the gears turning behind Nikki's calm facade. The questions of loyalty, the fear of Victor's reaction, the unspoken worry for Michael's future. Before Lauren could formulate a reply, a familiar stride cut through the hush of their tête-à-tête. Jack Abbott, blazer impeccably tailored and tie loosened in casual defiance, swung into view with that trademark grin that could charm investors and irritate Newman executives in equal measure. Jack slid into the empty chair beside Lauren, his presence instantly shifting the balance of power at the table. "Ladies," he began in that easy drawl, "I hope I'm not intruding," though the playful glint in his eyes suggested otherwise. Lauren offered a polite smile while Nikki regarded him coolly, as though daring him to chime in on a matter of Newman family affairs. Jack didn't hesitate. "Word travels fast in Genoa City," he said, glancing at Nikki's hand resting on the letter. "Michael's departure is headline news." He leaned forward conspiratorially, lowering his voice. "And if Victor finds out you were here with me while his golden boy walked away," his words trailed off, insinuating both scandal and strategic opportunity. Nikki stiffened, the faintest crease appearing between her brows. "You're implying something, Jack?" she asked, though only half locally outraged. Jack chuckled softly. only that Victor dislikes being blindsided. He'll hate knowing his wife and his fiercest rival discussed his greatest weakness today. He raised his coffee cup in a mock toast to Nikki's patience. But Lady Newman, he added more earnestly, Michael was the one bolt holding Victor's empire together. Without him, Victor could make a misstep. That's bad news for Jack Abbott, but worse news if Michael ends up with nowhere else to turn. Lauren watched Nikki's composure waver as the implications sank in. Nikki's loyalty to Victor was unquestionable. She had stood by him through hostile takeovers, family betrayals, and corporate warfare that would have shattered lesser men. Yet here, in the cool spring air, the veneer of certainty seemed to crack. Lauren felt a rush of sympathy for her old friend and a pang of guilt. She had drawn Nikki into Michael's orbit this afternoon, hoping for understanding, only to watch a familiar alliance strain under the weight of Michael's newfound independence. As the sunlight shifted toward late afternoon, the three of them remained locked in a delicate dance of power and persuasion. Words unspoken hung in the air, Nikki's fear that Victor's pride would demand retribution, Jack's hunger to seize the advantage, Lauren's fervent wish to protect her husband from the fallout. And beneath it all, the question of where Michael Baldwin would land when the dust of resignation settled. As an enemy of Newman, a liability to Newman Enterprises, or a man finally free to write his own future. In the downtown hush, amid clinking cups and the distant hum of city traffic, the seeds of a new struggle were sown, destined to blossom into yet another dramatic chapter in the never-ending saga of Genoa City. Lauren's reply was as unwavering as steel forged in the crucible of her own conviction. She met Nikki's incredulous stare with calm certainty, her tone measured but firm. Victor had an army of competent attorneys at his disposal. Michael was under no obligation to bail him out of every self-inflicted scandal or to serve as the moral governor of a man whose ambition knew no ethical bounds. Michael's resignation, Lauren insisted, was not an act of betrayal but a reclamation of his own integrity. Jack Abbott, listening from the edge of the cafe table where he'd been quietly stirring his coffee, nodded in wholehearted agreement. "It's not on Michael to rein in Victor Newman," he chimed in, voice low enough so that only Nikki and Lauren could hear. "If Victor wants a fixer, he can hire one of half a dozen high-priced lawyers in Genoa City. Michael's choice frees him from being complicit in Victor's schemes, and frankly, that's the only way he can maintain his own sanity." Later that afternoon, under the vaulted ceilings of the Abbott mansion, Jack repeated the news of Michael's resignation to Diana Abbott with the same mixture of gravity and self-assurance. Diana's usually composed features tightened with concern as she imagined the fallout. Victor's empire, shaken by the departure of its most stalwart defender, might lash out unpredictably. Jack offered his habitual reassurance. Victor was nothing if not resilient, and he would fight back with all the guile and resources at his disposal. "He'll claw his way out of this," Jack promised, placing a comforting hand on Diana's shoulder. "But the question is, who else will get caught in the crossfire when he does?" The historic feud between Jack Abbott and Victor Newman has long been the stuff of Genoa City legend, a clash of titans that has spilled over boardroom tables, cocktail receptions, and, more than once, courtroom benches. Now, with Michael Baldwin, the man whom Victor treated like a son, pulled forcibly from Victor's inner circle, the animosity between the Abbott and Newman clans threatens to escalate into something far more personal, far more dangerous. Whispers among the city's most powerful families suggest that if Victor's pride is wounded enough, he may resort to legal maneuvers or corporate hostilities so intense that they could imperil more than just Newman Enterprises. Jack, for his part, is tempted to exploit the moment, but he also recognizes the peril. Victor's wrath can be as merciless as it is ingenious. Amid these machinations, Nikki Newman finds herself caught between loyalty to her husband and the burgeoning friendship she shares with Lauren. Already, today's events have planted a seed of doubt in her mind. Should she side unequivocally with Victor, or should she temper her allegiance with empathy for Lauren's plea to protect Michael's well-being? Lauren's constant urgings over the past weeks have indeed set this chain of events in motion. Pressuring Michael to choose between home and office, between conscience and duty, but Nikki also understands that a marriage built on complicity in corporate misdeeds can be as fragile as one founded on hidden resentments. And then there is the unavoidable reality of their advancing years. Both Jack and Victor are men accustomed to exerting control in every arena, yet time spares no one. If this conflict spirals beyond heated words and power plays, if one of them suffers a heart attack in a tense negotiation, or collapses under the stress of a hostile takeover bid, the consequences could be catastrophic. In that scenario, Nikki would be a widow at best, a nurse at worst, torn between the grieving wife of one titan and the loyal friend of another. Her anger, in such a circumstance, could easily turn into a tempest aimed squarely at Lauren, whose well-intentioned guilt-tripping of Michael has inadvertently shattered the delicate balance holding these families together. In the days to come, Genoa City's society pages and corporate insiders will chronicle every twist and turn. Victor's strategic countermoves, Jack's opportunistic advances, Diana's cautious counsel, and Lauren's steadfast resolve to shield her husband from further moral compromise. But behind the headlines, in the quiet hours when cell phones are silenced and boardrooms lie empty, the true drama will unfold in Nikki's heart and mind. Will her friendship with Lauren survive a conflict that pits loyalty to her husband against empathy for her friend? Or will the resentment she bears, born of fear for Michael's safety and frustration at Lauren's role in provoking Victor's ire, grow so fierce that it shatters the bonds of sisterhood forever? Only time will tell, but one thing is certain: when the dust settles, the relationships among the Newman, Abbott, and Fenmore families will never be the same.